Hello everybody, my name is Billy, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how dependency injection works in ASP.NET Core. And if you don't know what dependency injection is, make sure you check out my last video where I go in depth into the explanation. Today's topic is just going to be a quick video on how to set up dependency injection, the different lifecycle hooks, and at the end of it I'll just give you a quick tip on how to keep it all organized. What I've done so far is just create an empty application. You can see it's all of the default. And the place you look into to start your dependency injection registry is in your startup. And I'm just going to minimize so you guys can see all of the details. So your startup will have a constructor. If you have an empty project, you won't have a constructor. You will have a configure services and you will have a configure. So what you're interested in is configure services. This is where you will register your dependency injection into. So usually I do it after add MVC. In case any of your dependencies, if you have any NuGet ones, they might require add MVC. There are three lifecycles you need to consider yourself with. The first one is Singleton, services.add Singleton. The second one is scoped, services.add scoped. And the third one is Transient, services, let me just move my mouse so you can see, services.add Transient. Add Singleton will create one instance of that object for the entirety of the application's lifecycle. So whenever your application starts, it will register that, create an instance of that, and stay for the rest of that until you shut down the server. Add scoped will be a object that lasts for your HTTP request lifecycle. So on your, let's say, GET, that one object will be created, and any subsequent dependencies that require it will have that same object passed around. And add transient will be in a class scoped lifecycle. So every time you have a new class, it will produce a new instance for you and share that into its dependency tree. I'm just going to quickly comment these out just so they're still here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create, using kind of the Microsoft example, I operation, and then we're going to create a singleton, a scoped, and a transient version of all three of them. All right, so I just quickly made all of the different operations. So I have the singleton, the scope, the transient, and all of them, they just create a new ID that we can peek into to kind of make sure that they're recreating for transient and scoped on different requests. And the singleton will be the same. And then I've also just created a my service interface too that we will just see, so we can inject that into our controller and see how these are changing as we go through. Go back and finalize all of our registries. So in startup, we're going to register our singleton now. And what I've done ahead is I have a bunch of different ways that we can actually register our singleton. So the first way is with generics. So we have I singleton operation. Let me resolve that namespace. We have a generic, which is the abstraction, and then the implementation. And then the same thing we can do here. We have an abstraction and we have the implementation that we can just new up. And then if you don't have a abstraction, you can do one of these where you can just set the implementation only, or you can new up the implementation only. And then you can also do one of these things where you can set it by type of. So once again, if you have implementation only, or if you have your abstraction and implementation, you can do it like that. I'm going to keep it very simple and have it just like this. And I'm going to just add the rest of them. So I'm going to add I scoped and add that as scoped operation. And same thing for transient. And I just want to show one more thing. Services.add. I'm going to add transient for my service, just so you can see if you do need to provide additional parameters, you can do it this way. So you can see there's a provider here, iService provider, that you can extract out. So you have to return this. Didn't mean to cut that. Turn this. And what this expects is the singleton, scoped, and transient operator. So you can use the provider here. So let's say you want to get the singleton out, and you call get service on the provider, and it will be able to resolve that for you on runtime. So if we want this one, we can get that. And then you can grab the scoped and transient, obviously, but what this lets you do is if you have any custom fields, you can actually pass them in at this point. Since I don't, I'm just going to remove that, and we're going to save this and now take a look at the lifecycle in our controller. All right, so I've cleaned up everything a little bit, closed the tabs, and also in our controller, I've added all of the different dependencies. So I have the singleton, the scope, the transient, and then the service, which once again, the service will have the same thing, singleton, scoped, and transient. And what I'm expecting is that the singleton will have the same ID every single time. The scoped will have a new one for each time I refresh the page, and the transient should be different between my service and home controller every single time. So let's run that and see how that looks like. Okay. And I have my page right here. So it's just loading up and it's blocked because I have my debug. And so we'll see here. So this is 7AB, A2E, and this is 87D. So what we're going to do is we're going to step through, and then we're going to hit the home controller here. And we're going to make sure that this is the same. This one should be the same as well. Okay, and this one should be different. And that was 87D. Okay, so now that's totally different and we can totally see that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh this page, and we're going to basically see that this one, the scoped one, is going to be different. So let's take a look at that. And I'm just going to quickly refresh. You can see that's the same. Now this has changed, and this transient, we've already proven that this will always change. Okay, so once again, watch this one, and it should be different than this one here. So in your own design, make sure that you keep in mind which lifecycle you want to use. If you're using a configuration or a database connection or an HTTP client, it's best to use singletons. Scoped is usually used most of the time throughout anything that you're going to have a request lifecycle, and transient is just anything you want to just throw away real quick. Finally, one of the rules about the life cycles is that you cannot have a scoped inside of a singleton, because if you have a scoped, scope will be created per request, and singleton starts up when the application starts up. So when you do this, your system will blow up on runtime and you'll see the exception that gets thrown. So just keep in mind you can't do this. You can have transient. Transient, make sure that it is thread safe because it has to be in a singleton. So you can see right here, invalid operation exception, and then you'll see that you cannot have scoped inside of a singleton. Okay, so that's very important to keep in mind when you are designing your dependency injection tree. Okay, so I'm going to just undo this now, just delete all of this since we don't need it. And let's go back to our startup and just go give you guys a quick tip on how to stay organized, because as your dependencies grow, your startup is also going to grow directly. So a nice thing to do is to actually encapsulate all of them into like a dependency registry extension method. C registry extension. Well, let's just call it dependency injection registry. Just keep it nice and simple. And what you want to do is you want to make a static class, and you're going to create a public static, and you want to return a iService collection. And this is totally optional if you want to return it. I do it just so they can kind of daisy chain together, because if you notice, add singleton also returns a iService collection, and all that does is it lets you write your syntax like this, so that you don't have to keep calling services dot. You can actually add it all like this. Okay, I'm just going to undo all that, and I'm going to go back here. So the convention is to call add and then whatever you're registering. So I'm going to just call it add my services, and you're going to call this iService collection to make it an extension method. And I'm just going to return services. Oops, services. All right. And it's very simple. All you have to do is copy all of your dependencies. I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut them and paste them right here. And then replace the startup file. And we're going to just take services and we're just going to call this. And that makes it so much more clean because now you have one thing and this file can kind of grow as is. And if this is in a different project, it can be broken down into more sub registries as well. That is it for today's very quick tutorial. If you like this short format, make sure you like this video to let me know and comment below on anything I can improve on. And if you want to see more in these videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys next time.